QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021 Set Up New Company File. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. In a prior presentation, we went through the purchasing process and download and installation process of QuickBooks Desktop, and now we have the icon on the computer for QuickBooks Pro Desktop to launch the program. Now remember that you can think about QuickBooks Pro Desktop as similar to something like a Microsoft Word, in that when we launch the program, we're launching the program, not necessarily the data file, such as a Word document in our comparison to the Word file, and then we're going to set up the data file. Now the thing that's a little bit different with QuickBooks than, say, using like a Microsoft Word and the relationship between the program and the file is that most people, when they open the software, simply use one data file instead of like Word where you use multiple different Word files, and therefore they typically just open the program and then the program will automatically be going to that one data file, the one company file that they always use, which again has that kind of disconnect. It results in a disconnect to think that the data file is separate actually from the software. Also note that because all of our data is in one file, we want to make sure that we have backup files for that data as well. So as we do that, we're going to open up our QuickBooks file, and then we're going to be setting up our company file from scratch. As we do so, we're going to have to save that company file, kind of like a Word document, to some other location, resulting in us having, two icons now. One the program, the other is going to be the company file. When we do that, Intuit will often put the company file in some remote location, like a default type of location, and you may not know exactly where that is because you always open QuickBooks by going to the program itself. So what we want to do is set up the data file, find it, and then put it into our folder here that we set up in a prior presentation so we can locate it. So I'm going to put the actual data file into our data files in QuickBooks in this folder. Then in the future, when we make backup files of that data, I'm going to put it here as well. Again, you want the backup files to be separate from the data files in practice, but it's useful to put them all in one place so we can get a feel for and make sure that we understand that these things are going to be different, rather than just thinking that every time we click on this icon, it's saving everything, right? We want to know where everything is located. So let's go through this process. We're going to be opening up the QuickBooks Pro Plus, and this is typically the process that you will be using to open up QuickBooks, whether you have the data file set up or not. When you open it, then it's typically going to go to a screen like this. Now, if you have prior software that you've been using, if you've been working with prior data files, it'll have your most recent data files in basically this window here. If it's a brand new software to you and you have no data files, then you won't have any data files here. This is a nice little feature because you can then open up these data files directly from this place. This is like the recently opened files in a similar way that you would have in like a Microsoft Word, and you can open these recently located items. However, when you open everything from this location, then you start to lose track of where those files are actually located in practice. So once again, you kind of want to know where the files are located on your device. So we're going to be setting up a new company file from scratch. We can do that by going here to the Create New Company File icon. Just note the other items here are open or restore an existing company file. That would be used if we wanted to open a company file that is already open and we don't see it up top, but we're opening an existing company file. Or if we're trying to restore a company file from a backup file, then we can use this item. And then we have some sample files that are useful, and these are useful if you want to see some data files that already have data in them. These are sample files provided by Intuit, the owner of QuickBooks, in order for you to just basically practice with, so that you don't have a blank file or that you don't mess up your files and you can have some data in there. And then you also have the search field for the Find a Company file. Now note that if you do not have this screen open and you're in like a company, you can still open a new company file or create a new company with the file dropdown up top. I prefer to use the file dropdown up top when I'm going to make a new company as of this. And you can also open or restore, like these options down here are basically right here, open or restore, open previous company, right? So, but I do it with the file tab because the file tab, the dropdown is always there. If I have another company open, if I'm not in this window, I always have the file dropdown. So you can do it from this location. I prefer to use the file dropdown. Let's do that, file dropdown, and then new company. So first screen, what does creating a company file require? For creating a company file, you need to have Intuit account. which would provide you better control of your data, superior fraud protection, one account for all Intuit products. So we typically would set up the account as we purchase the product. Who are you creating the company file for? We're going to assume it's for myself here. I'm the admin, so you want to make sure that you are the admin. That's going to give you the most access to making changes. My email will be used to create an Intuit account, which will be used to access all Intuit products, or for someone else, if you're creating it for someone else. I'm creating the company file on behalf of the admin. And then we have other options down below. So we can open an existing file, which we probably wouldn't be here to do. We would have done that in a prior screen. Convert a quick-in file. Now, when you're starting a new company file, note that you might be starting a new company file and already have data be moving, in other words, from some other software into it. So if you use, for example, Quicken, then you might have a data file that's already been processed. It has some prior data that you want to move into QuickBooks, and you can do that conversion process in order to move that data in. We convert accounting software. If you have some other type of accounting software, you can go through that similar conversion process. Now here we're going to assume that we're going to be starting from scratch. And if you're starting from scratch, we will assume some beginning balances as well. Because also note that if you're moving from another accounting software, the other option that you can put in place is to simply enter the beginning balances as of this point in time, so that you can basically start your data from that point in time forward, and then the prior data you can have in the prior software or in the prior accounting system. And that's basically what we will do here. So whether you are starting completely from scratch and you don't have any accounting data and you're going to just start the new company file, or whether you have some basic opening balances, which is what we are going to assume here, but you want to start from this point forward, entering the new data from here on forward, then we're just going to choose the first option up top. So I'm going to start the setup process. So we'll go through starting the setup process. So it's asking for our sign-in information. We should have this information provided when we purchased the software. So we should have our account set up. We would need to purchase. So now we're going to be setting up our information. So help us customize your settings to offer you the right tools for a seamless business experience. Now the ones with the red asterisks here, those are going to be the required fields. So if you're following along with us in the practice problem, you can't set up another company file. This is going to be the business name information we're going to be setting up here. So we've got Get Great Guitars is going to be our business name. The industry. Now the industry is going to be really important here because Intuit or QuickBooks will try to help us to set up our chart of accounts, which is going to be our major list of accounts by industry. So let's see what that looks like. We're going to go to Help Me Choose. Help Me Choose. Now, sometimes your industry is going to be really straightforward, and sometimes it's going to be something that'll be a little bit more abstract. And you may want to choose kind of more of a generic industry. So we've got accounting, we've got advertising, agriculture, church and religious organizations, construction type of information. Notice that as you choose these different items, you're going to see different accounts on the right-hand side. This is going to be, in essence, your chart of accounts that are going to be appearing, your list of accounts, and they're going to try to do it by industry standard to try to make your chart of accounts, conform to the norm of the industry. So if you were talking a manufacturing company, you've got the manufacturing down here. One of the service company or dental work, medical work, and whatnot. One of the major things you want to be keeping in mind here is whether or not you're going to be selling something that has inventory or not. Are you tracking inventory within the QuickBooks system, or are you not tracking inventory within the QuickBooks system? So if you don't find exactly your industry here, that's going to be really what you want to be considering. Do you want to set up a system that has inventory or not? And that comes down to these two basic items down below. Even if you see your industry up top, you may want to start off with like a basic item down below, because this will give you the most flexibility for you to set up and more customize your chart of accounts. Or you might even want to have other or none, and notice there are no accounts on the right hand side when you say other or none, because the chart of accounts has not yet been set up. This is actually a kind of nice option, especially if you're a smaller company, because you may not have all of the chart of accounts that you will be needing. But if you don't understand the account types very well, most people are going to be benefiting from picking up some type of chart of accounts and then picking up the idea or the system that as you do the data input, you're first going to check if there is an account that is appropriate. Most of the time it's going to be for like expense accounts that you're going to have a question on. And if there is not one that's there, then think about whether you want to basically add one. So if you sell inventory, then you're going to think about, do you want to track inventory in the QuickBooks system or do some kind of inventory tracking outside and have kind of a simpler inventory method that you will be using, possibly not tracking all the inventory through QuickBooks. It kind of depends on what you want. If you want to track inventory, then you want to make sure that you have some kind of product-based item that will be selected. What we're going to do is pretend that we're selling guitars here. So we do have inventory we're going to sell, and we will have some service items as well, including guitar lessons and other basically general kind of service items we will set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell a general product-based business, because I want to make sure that QuickBooks gives me the inventory related accounts, including on the income statement, the cost of goods sold type of accounts, which represents the inventory as we expend the inventory, and then we'll be able to set up that inventory information. So I'm going to say, okay, we set up the chart of accounts, then we have the business tax information. So we have the kind of general layout for the tax type of information. You could be a sole proprietor. And this is going to be, how is your business organized? You would know this from your CPA firm or something like that. If you're starting from scratch and you haven't set up any other kind of organization, then you're going to typically be a sole proprietorship or a general partnership. And then if you set up something more complex than that for smaller businesses, the typical items that would be more complex would be an S corporation, or possibly a corporation or LLC or something like that. Or LLC or LLP are going to be the more complex kind of scenarios that would be set up. But small businesses, when you set up the company, will probably be a sole proprietorship or a partnership here. So I'm gonna set up with the sole proprietorship and go from there. So we'll set up the sole proprietorship, and then we've got the email. Now the EIN number, notice it's not a required field. This is the number that basically the IRS counts you as. The IRS sees you as a number. They see your business as a number. The EIN number is something that you get from the IRS. It's an employer identification number. So if you have employees, you're required to have it in order to process the payroll. However, if you don't have employees, you still may want an employer identification number, even if you're a sole proprietor, even though you might not need it, because you can use your number that the IRS sees you as, which is your social security number oftentimes. But the EIN number, if you have to provide it to somebody else, for example, to provide you with the 1099 information, is going to be useful, because then you don't have to give out your social security number. So you may want to set up an EIN number. It's a pretty straightforward process with the IRS, even if you're a sole proprietorship. It's going to be set up something like a 9 number. And then I think it'll have a dash, but I think 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's how many digits we have. So we'll see if it gives us an error there. Then the phone number. So I'm not going to put in a phone number here. It's not a required field, but if you want the phone number on like the documents that you will be providing to your customers, like any correspondence documents that you would have that you're going to be preparing through the QuickBooks system, or possibly on like invoices and sales receipts, then you'd want the phone number in here. And then the business address, this is going to be the address that we will be using. This is going to be 90210 Beverly Hills address. This is just a home for sale that I'm going to use in the practice problem. So I'm going to say the address here is 9530 Cedarbrook Drive, Beverly Hills 90210. And then I'm going to say it's in California and in US. So that's going to be it. Let's go ahead and create the company. All right, I had to add another number to the EIN. I'm going to try it again because it said it wasn't in the proper format. So it needs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 digits. And it's usually with a dash. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 digits. Let's see if I'll do that. It'll say create the file. So here it is. It's creating the company file up top. So this is going to actually create a company file that it's going to put on your desktop. So it's making a new, file that will have a different icon that'll be on your desktop now, or possibly not on the desktop, but on the computer somewhere. And then you want to make sure that you know where it is, so that if you have a problem, you can find it there. So here we have it. We have Get Great Guitars, and it says QuickBooks Desktop Usage and Analytics Study at Intuit. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I'm going to close this out. And notice what they did not do. They didn't tell us, they didn't give us a browse screen. This is something that kind of annoys me a little bit. They didn't give us a browse screen to tell me where you set up the QuickBooks file. Where did you put it? And so that's why you want to kind of go back in there now and say, okay, well, where is this QuickBooks file? So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to close this out. You can review some of that intro information. I won't do it here. I'm going to maximize this screen, and this is the basic intro. So we'll start working from here. But just note, if I minimize this screen, you're going to say, okay, now I have the QuickBooks program, and I've got my folder over here, but now I should see some other file, just kind of like a Word, similar to like a Word document, which I don't have. I know there's one here, but I don't see it from this location. So there's a couple ways then that you could find that. To locate the QuickBooks file, there's a couple ways we can do it. One, you can go to the file dropdown, and if you go into this open previous company, I believe this last one, that's the one we're currently in at this point in time. That gives you the mapping of the directory. So another way you might try to search for a company files is we can close the actual company file without closing QuickBooks itself and go back to that prior screen that has the previously opened files within it. So for that, I'm going to go down and say close company. So if I close the company but not QuickBooks, then it's going to take me back to this screen. And once again, you can see that I have the previous company files open. And if I hover over this company, which is the last one I was just in, it'll give me that data screen right there. And I can also, if I still can't find a file, I can use the find a company file here. But what I want to do is use this mapping right there. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to print this screen. I'm going to hover over it, print the screen. I'm going to open up a Word document and paste that mapping onto the Word document, and then go hunt around on my desktop to find where the file is so that I can then move it to where we want it, which is going to be on this front screen in this folder. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say, all right, here's my Word document, and let's open up a Word document. So I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to crop it using my format picture, so I just have the little piece that I want. I'm going to try to make this really big so I can see where it is. So it's under the C drive, it's under users, public documents, Intuit, QuickBooks, and then company files, and then finally get Great Guitar. So I want to go find that and put it where I want it to be. So I'm going to go, okay. So they said it was under the C drive, so I'm going to go to my PC and say, all right, you said it was under the C drive. And here's the mapping kind of up top that you can see. So, okay, so we got C drive. It's under the users. All right, there's the users. It's under then the public. So public then, all right, public folder. You can see the mapping up top here should match up. So, okay, you put it under public, and then you put it under documents. All right, that kind of makes sense, I guess. So public and then public documents. I guess public documents is the one they're looking for there. All right. And then it's under documents and then Intuit. Okay. So now Intuit, that's the owner of QuickBooks. That kind of makes sense. All right. Under Intuit. And then you put it under QuickBooks. All right. That makes sense. Under QuickBooks. And then they said company files. All right. That kind of makes sense. Company files. And then they have, finally, the Get Great Guitars file. So here it is, Get Great Guitars. Now the one that says, now we have a couple different ones here, but we're looking at this one down here. You can see when it was created. So I just made it like this is today when I'm making this. So notice that these two other files were made at the same time. I don't think you really need these two files, but I'm going to copy them over as well. Like if you just copy this file to wherever you want to put it, then you can go ahead. I think you'll be fine, but I'm going to take these files with it. Notice that this file is a QBW file. That's going to be the one that you actually open. So when you open up QuickBooks, I can simply double click on this as I would if I was to open up a Word document, or I can open QuickBooks up itself and then find this one. And if this is the only file I work with, then that's probably the easiest way to do it. But what I want to do is I want to copy these. I'm going to select from here to here. I'm going to copy them. And because I'm not open in that file now, it's not open in QuickBooks, so I should be able to move it without it causing me any problems because the file that I'm looking at isn't open. So I'm going to say, all right, I would like you to put that where I want it, which is this file. And again, you're more than fine to keep it where it's at, but it's nice to know where the QuickBooks file is. So I want to be able to just demonstrate that, to put it here. I'm going to say, here's where I want the data file. So I'm going to put the data file here, and I'm going to make a large icon so you could take a look at it. So here's going to be the data file. Big. So once again, it's a QBW file. So now, if I go back over here, notice the mapping will no longer be true at this point because now I moved the data file. If I was to try to open it from here, it would no longer find it until I open it from the new location again. But just realize there's two ways that you can open the file now. I can open up the QuickBooks program, so I can say, all right, and this is what most people will do. They'll go to their desktop and say, I want to open up the file that I have just set up. And when you open up QuickBooks, because you only use one data file perhaps, if it's your only company file, it will always be basically the last one that you are in. You can open it from there. Now we moved it, so to find it, you can go to open or restore the file, and that'll give you your browser screen. We want to open the file, and then you can locate the file, which is on our desktop, and so on and so forth. You can also open it from the icon. So if you want to open it kind of like you would with a Word document, find the actual company file. And this is far less common for people to do, but it's useful to know where the company file is. You can simply double click on the QBW file itself, and that will then, like a Word document, open up the QuickBooks program and take you directly into the company file that you have selected. So here we have it. Now it's asking us to set up a password here. So I'm just going to keep the username as admin as the default, and then I'm going to see if I can go without a password. And it says no, it wants a password. So it's requiring a password. So I'm going to say the password for us is going to be GGG Get Great Guitars 1234. Get Great Guitars 1234. GGG Get Great Guitars 1234 is going to be our password. I'm just going to keep the admin as the username. So I'm going to say confirm. So now we've set up our password. Your QuickBooks password has been changed. So I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. And now it's opening us directly into the file that we've put in place, that being the Get Great Guitars QuickBooks Desktop Pro Plus 2021. So that's our starting point. Nothing's in this file, although they did give us a list already, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, but let's just take a look at the lists drop down and the chart of accounts. And I'm going to open up the chart of accounts. This is the chart of accounts that they gave you, even though we haven't input it, and it was based on the fact that we chose a particular industry. Now, in our case, we wanted these cost of goods sold accounts. Those relate to kind of inventory. So if you're going to be tracking inventory, you're going to be wanting these types of accounts. So as we go, we'll talk more about this chart of accounts, and we'll talk more about, adding more accounts as needed in the account categories. But we'll stop here for now. I'm going to minimize this and I'll close this out. So now we've got the QuickBooks program up front, and now we've got our files here, and we've got the actual data file, the data file being in this location.